Hey, so I've been making these videos of PS Vita games that still have active online communities, and I thought to myself, you know what? I have enough here where I can make my own top 10 lists of PS Vita online multiplayer games. Now, I have talked about these games before in previous videos, so longtime viewers may notice me repeating myself, but I think you'll enjoy seeing how I rank these games. And for those new to the channel, just know that all the games I'm about to mention still have active servers with people playing in them. So if you're thinking about picking them up for the online multiplayer, then now's the time to do it, cause who knows how much longer the servers are gonna stay up. Anyway, here's my list of top 10 active PS Vita online multiplayer games in 2019. Number 10. Virtua Tennis 4 World Tour Edition. Boy, I think the last time I played Virtua Tennis was on the Sega Dreamcast. Does anyone remember that thing? I'm under the impression that tennis games aren't that popular nowadays, so I wasn't really expecting to find anyone on here. But as luck would have it, there was another person online. From what I can tell, the game ran smoothly, although there was a slight delay when I tried to swing my racket, but I think that's just me needing more time to adjust to the gameplay. I think if I was given another match, I would have done a lot better. For some reason, the game is starting to get up there in price, so I would suggest skipping it altogether, unless you can get it for a good deal. The online might be hit or miss, but as a single player experience, this has everything you know and love about the Virtua Tennis franchise. Number 9. Dead or Alive 5 Plus. The title of this game perfectly sums up what the online multiplayer is like. It's either dead or alive. There are days when the lobbies can seem like a ghost town, and then there are those rare occurrences when someone's on the other end and you make a connection. I was convinced that everyone had moved on to the newest game in the franchise until I kept reading comments on my videos saying there are still people playing this. Now, I can't pinpoint the exact time frame for when the servers are active, so you'll have to keep searching and hope for the best. As for when I did find a match, I noticed the netcode was still quite playable, and most often than not, it ran rather well. I mean, it's not perfect, but it works a lot better than Street Fighter Cross Tekken. And since it's cross-play, you're most likely going to be paired with someone on a PlayStation 3 console. Seeing that there are still people signing in to play this game just gives me one of those happy moments knowing that even after death, the Vita still refuses to die. Number 8. Dragon's Crown. Playing this game online reminds me of those days when arcades used to be popular. It gives you that same exact feeling of playing those beat-em-ups with complete strangers. Most of the time I had no idea what was going on, but that's the beauty of Dragon's Crown. It's classic beat-em-up at its finest. The online is a little laggy, but I don't think it's really gonna matter for this kind of game. There's only so many attacks and ways to hit the enemy. My only gripe with playing online is that sometimes your teammate will be across the screen, which will cause the camera to sway back and forth. It's kind of annoying, and to be honest, it made me a little dizzy. I couldn't find a game the first time I tried searching, but was successful the second. Not bad for a dead handheld, right? Number 7. Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Oh my goodness, this was so embarrassing. Trust me, I'm a lot better at this game than you might think. It's just that I haven't played it in so long. Honest. Rank and player matches are pretty much obsolete, so don't even bother looking for those. Your best bet is to look for a lobby with all parameters set to any and allow for touch controls. If you're lucky enough, like I was, you'll find a room or two. The connection was surprisingly smooth. A lot smoother than Street Fighter Cross Tekken even. I don't know, maybe Ultimate Marvel just had a better netcode. Also, can we just take a second to admire how good this game still looks? I mean, this was recorded off the PlayStation TV, and to be honest, it's not that far off from the PS3 version. If you're planning on jumping back online, make sure you've got all your combos down. The lobby you find will most likely have someone who's been playing this game for years. Or they could be just using touch controls. In that case, just make sure you're playing on your Vita and not the PlayStation TV. Number 6. Need for Speed Most Wanted. How on earth is the Vita considered dead when people are still online playing a game from 2012? Like seriously, I was not expecting to find anyone on here. I vaguely remember anything about the online multiplayer, so it took me a few minutes to get myself situated. From what I can tell, it's basically you and 3 other players racing around the map and trying to see who can score the most points in each of the given objectives. They range from jumping across a lake, scoring points while drifting, and racing past speed traps. There's also the traditional racing and team racing as well. From my experience, the online still works pretty well. Although there are a few stutters here and there, the frame rate is smooth for the most part. It's not a solid 30 frames a second, but it's consistent enough where it doesn't make me nauseous. That's a huge plus in my book. Unfortunately, you will notice some players teleporting across the screen when the connection starts to drop. Still, it wasn't enough to ruin the fun. And let me just say, the online multiplayer is very fun. It's like being on the playground and running around with a bunch of my friends back in grade school. Number 5. HELLDIVERS. Yeah, I recently talked about this game in my last video, so if you haven't seen it yet, check it out. I'll put a link in the description below. So what's so great about HELLDIVERS? Well, for one, it might be the most active online multiplayer game for the PlayStation Vita right now. If you've never heard of it, HELLDIVERS is a top-down twin-stick shooter with a big emphasis on teamwork. Other than the opening intro, there isn't really a story mode. You choose missions to complete and gather resources to upgrade your gear. The fun part is working together with a group of strangers to complete various objectives in each mission. It's cross-play, cross-save, and cross-buy on 3 different consoles: PS3, PS4, and of course, the PS Vita. It's not surprising to see that it runs best on the PS4, but the Vita version also manages to hold its own. It's a fun game to jump into when you're getting tired of Killzone Mercenary or Call of Duty Declassified. Even after all these years, the community is still very active, so it won't be hard to find others to play with. Number 4. Freedom Wars. Man, talk about teamwork. You know, I was really scared going into this again. From what I remember, it wasn't exactly the kind of game you just hop in and play. I remember always getting confused with the menus for some reason, but what made me nervous was that I hadn't played this game in so long. I really didn't want to have to spend hours learning how to play this game again. But maybe it's just my natural gift or the game's intuitive design. Learning the mechanics again after a few years of being away was pretty easy. I mean, 2 or 3 minutes into the match and I had pretty much figured out how everything worked. This game must have some sort of cult following because there were already people in the room when I joined. The online worked well too. There's the occasional stutter, but nothing that would cause the match to disconnect. And for a game with so much going on, that's pretty impressive. I will admit, taking down an abductor with a bunch of strangers provides such a great sense of camaraderie. Camaraderie? What does that even mean? I think I'm just making up words now. In the middle of battle, I realized I was low in health, so to my surprise, a guy places a healing vine next to me. Now, was that because he realized I was low in health, or was it intended for him and I just happened to be close by? Man, camaraderie. Stages feel gigantic as ever, and battles are still just as epic. This game hasn't changed at all. Score another one for the PlayStation Vita. Number 3. Killzone Mercenary. See this? The Vita was never murdered. You guys just stopped playing it. Mercenary warfare might be hit or miss, and Warzone is pretty much dead, but you can always count on finding a match in guerrilla warfare. Even at 11 PM, I was still able to find a match on my first try. That's pretty impressive considering how late it was. Either that or people just didn't have work the next day. Although the community might not be as big as the next game I'm about to mention, I feel that Killzone Mercenary has the upper hand in terms of visuals and gameplay. The few that are left playing online are very good, but lately I've seen a few newcomers thrown into the mix. The online is fun once you get a hang of it, and even if you're not the greatest at first-person shooters, there's enough people playing where I think the teams are evenly matched. It's a great game and definitely deserves a spot on that dusty Vita shelf. I know I say this every time I talk about Killzone Mercenary, but this is the one game that offered a tiny glimpse at what the PlayStation Vita was truly capable of. Number 2. Call of Duty Black Ops Declassified. By far, the game with the most active community on the PlayStation Vita. You can hop on practically at any time of the day and you're bound to find someone to play with. I prefer Killzone Mercenary's slower, more thought out gameplay, but man, I can't deny the instant satisfaction I get from the random kills in Declassified. I especially love it when a person spawns right in front of me. Also, I would advise everyone to just sit in the corner and wait for people to come to you. Just kidding! That was a joke. Anyway, what else can I say? The online multiplayer is fun. Notice how I said online multiplayer and not single player? There's plenty of people playing and it's super easy to get into a match. Unfortunately, there is still a few too many random kicks from the server. But like I mentioned above, getting back into a game is super quick. Now, if only the maps were just a tiny bit larger, this would have been the perfect FPS game to get on the PS Vita. Well, at least in terms of online multiplayer. Other than Team Tactical and Drop Zone, all the other modes have people in them. You're almost always guaranteed to find someone in Team Deathmatch. Number 1. Little Big Planet. This game right here makes me fall in love with the PlayStation Vita all over again. If you've ever had any doubt in your mind that Sony wasn't serious about the PS Vita, then play this game. I mean, it's easy to see why the PS Vita failed when we looked at shoddy third-party ports like Borderlands 2, Resident Evil Revelations 2, or even Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2 Plus. We're so fixated on pointing out its flaws and weaknesses that sometimes we forget what Sony gave us the first year it was available. We forget about the games that really pushed the boundary of what it meant to have console gaming on the go. Little Big Planet is one of those games. From its wonderful use of color to its creative approach to storytelling, there's just something magical and heartwarming about this game. As I'm playing, I realize that this is much more than just your ordinary run-of-the-mill platformer. Sure, the story mode is phenomenal, but what sets this game apart is the community that's wrapped around it. Backed by a strong and dedicated fan base, the online multiplayer is still alive and well. Every time I sign on, there's always people online. Whether it's having someone join you in the story mode or browsing the many user-created levels, there's always a sense of feeling connected. And while we're talking about user-created levels, let me just say, these are so much fun to play. Some are better than others, but there's no denying the passion and creativity that went into making them. I can't imagine the amount of time that goes into creating one of these levels. I mean, I could never be able to do that, so I give huge props to the fans that spend their time laboring over this game to create fun and exciting new adventures for others to enjoy. I also love just standing in my pod. There's something about it that's just so relaxing. I think it's the music. The more I play Little Big Planet, the more I start to appreciate the PlayStation Vita. It's a system that went out a little too early, but thanks to some games, won't be forgotten. If you're a fan of the franchise or just like playing good games in general, then definitely try out Little Big Planet. The community is active, the online works, and the gameplay is practically never ending. Yes, I said practically. Deal with it. Now, if you want to know what other PS Vita games are still being played in 2019, then click on this playlist right here. And if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. Do that, and you'll help me buy more games to talk about. Later.